You know when you instantly have regret about something? As I was walking up, I thought, that's a really, really big smiley picture of me, and I kind of wish I didn't do that, because I thought, oh, you're not going to know what I look like because I'm standing right here. So yeah, I kind of wish I hadn't done that now. We'll move on from that side as quickly as we possibly can. Well, for anyone that doesn't know who I am, my name's Sam. I'm the owner and director of Grand Union Finance. Well, as it says on there, 14 years in the property finance industry. I know what you're thinking, far too youthful to be in the industry for such a long time. I am actually 37, I'm an old bastard now. I actually started working for Foxtons, back in the day. 14 years, for anyone that's good at maths, you'll probably be working out, well, hang on a second, that was probably just before one of the biggest crashes that we had in the economy in quite some time. Not the best time to go into the world of finance, but I managed to worm my way through, which actually culminated in me deciding to go in to do my own first development project back in 2010. My dad's a builder, and the finance market wasn't particularly brilliant. Yeah, he kind of said to me, my industry isn't all that brilliant, your industry isn't all that brilliant, maybe we'll come together, we can utilise each other's talents. And he said to me, yeah, you know about development finance, didn't you, Sam? And I said, yeah. Google was my best friend, and I found out all about development finance at that point, called up about 101 different development finance lenders, and that was really my introduction into this type of finance. Before that, I was doing mostly residential mortgages, which are hella boring. So I don't really do those too much anymore. It kind of led me into working more and more exclusively with investors and developers such as yourselves. And now, because I have had the privilege really of working with some of this country's best investors and developers over the years, it's allowed me to really see some key attributes or key traits that a lot of these people have in common. And instead of boring the hell out of you about interest rates and how to structure finance, I thought instead today I'd actually talk to you a little bit about my clients and why they're so good at what they do, because hopefully you can learn from some of these traits and take them on yourself. And I've done this by way of essentially a load of quotes that they have told me over the years. So the first of which I hear all the time, and I know Steve said earlier on, we're not really here to talk about portfolio building, but I wanted to bring this in to sort of raise a point. When I speak to clients for the first time, we actually don't speak about finance very much on the phone. I do most of the talking, unsurprisingly, but I ask them to tell me a little bit about what they're trying to achieve, what they're trying to get out of investing, what their ultimate goals are. And it's amazing, I'd say 99 times out of 100, yeah, I want to earn 10 grand a month. What does 10 grand a month mean? And this is why this is so important is, has anyone read the book 4 Hour Work Week by Tim Ferriss? Yeah, show of hands, cool. Not enough people have read that book. It's a really, really interesting book. It's effectively about how you can run a business for 4 hours a week. Not everyone in this room is going to want to do that, but there is a key exercise at the beginning of this book, which I think every single person who wants to get into business in some way, shape or form, and don't forget property is a business, should do. And effectively it's an exercise about thinking about your perfect life and then working out how much that's going to cost on a monthly basis. So if you want a McLaren, if you want that 5-bedroom house down the road, if you want to go on 12 expensive holidays every single year, actually figuring out what the monthly cost of that lifestyle would be. Because it's amazing how many people will say to me, I want to earn 10 grand a month, when realistically, their perfect lifestyle could probably come at a much lower cost to them, which actually means that they can bring forward the time that they can achieve that goal. So we talk about that quite a lot. And the reason why I wanted to bring this up and talk to you about this is because basically it's about when you are trying to, well, when the shit hits the fan, shall we say, and it will, because property is really, really difficult, you will not be thinking about 10K. You'll be thinking about something greater than that, more important than that. Basically the story that I wanted to tell you about with regards to this particular slide was actually a client of mine that I spoke to probably about 3 years ago. And it's amazing when I think back, I can literally envisage like all the details, all these important calls that I've had with clients over the years. I can imagine the details in my head. I was actually outside of my flat in North London at the time. I was next to a wine merchant in their car park. Basically, I didn't want to go inside and spoil the call by getting in the elevator, which would cut off the call basically. And I had this conversation with them, and they were one of the people that said to me, I want to earn 10 grand a month. I asked the question, why? It turns out that the couple had harboured ambitions of starting their own children's charity. And they had worked out with incredible precision that to run this charity on a monthly basis was going to cost them around £10,000. It was around like £10,007, something like that. And I was really taken aback by that because I was waiting for the 10 grand a month. Yeah, we kind of pulled that out of thin air. But they'd actually figured out that if they built a property portfolio, they were quite happy in their jobs. They were probably going to keep their jobs for quite a decent period of time. That if they kept their jobs and they managed to build this property portfolio, it would give them the freedom to be able to run this particular charity and not have to pay themselves out of the charity. Most charities, the people that run them get paid. So half the money that you're giving to these charities is probably just going to fill the pockets of the CEOs. They wanted to run it completely independently, and the property portfolio that they were going to build, and part of that was that they were going to build up to ground up developments, which would allow them to, get to this 10 grand a month pretty quickly. Was all to do that. And I thought that was amazing because actually when we have had some tough times over the last couple of years, they have in particular, both in their personal lives and in terms of their property journey, very cheesy line, but property journey, they've got through it, and it's because they have a genuine goal that they're trying to achieve. They're actually trying to reach a very, very particular target. Okay, it's monetary, but it actually has something behind it. There's a reason why they decided to do it. So I wanted to share that as a real common trait that a lot of my most successful clients have, is that their goal is not financial. If your goal is financial, I'm pretty certain that you are going to end up failing, because when something does go wrong, money isn't the thing that solves it in your mind. It's that other thing that you really want to try and achieve. So really, really important. Another great quote. This is a genuine quote from one of my clients. This is brilliant. I love this. Conductors don't get their hands dirty. They just hold a stick and wave. That was one of my favourites. I remember laughing my head off when she said that to me over the phone. And effectively, what this basically means, and another common trait, is delegation. Being able to sit at one end of a room with a whole group of people that are going to do an individual specialist job for you, and be able to wave that that conductor's, I don't even know what they call it, wand or whatever it is, and make the magic happen. That just literally rolled off my tongue. I didn't have that planned. And one of the things that I find, I guess this is more from my point of view as a broker, the investors that work and what I perceive to be the best investors, when they come to me and ask me a load of questions, they don't kind of question me too much, which obviously from my perspective that makes my life a hell of a lot easier when my clients aren't constantly asking me, why are you doing this, why are we doing that, why aren't we trying this lender instead of that lender, or Johnny down the street has managed to get that 2.5% rate, why can't I have that 5% rate? It's trust. It's actually delegating to a group of people, not just a broker like myself, but an accountant, insurance brokers, the planners that we have in the room, the agents as well, and basically trusting that they know what they're talking about. Now, I'm going to let you into a little secret. Every single one of the different types of people that I've mentioned there will get it wrong at some point, okay? I don't get it right every single time, because if I'm dealing with 20 odd different cases at any one time, it's impossible for me to know a certain tiny little change in criteria or tiny little change in rate or product or whatever it is. So sometimes, and this happened literally yesterday, where a client said to me, another broker has just told me that I should be using this lender, and I thought, they won't lend to you. They absolutely won't lend to you. So I called the lender just to be on the safe side, and actually they've made a slight tweak to their criteria about a week ago, which means that they will now lend to this person, which is great. I've learned something there. But when I say that as a really good developer, you should trust the people around them, trust that they're going to get it right most of the time, but the more you question them, the chances are that they're going to start getting it wrong a little bit more, because they're going to start second guessing themselves. Trust that they know what they're doing, and being able to, I guess, have that trust is something that I think a lot of people struggle with. I've never really struggled with that because maybe I've just had some good people around me. But being able to delegate is a classic trait of really, really good quality investors and developers. This is another genuine quote from one of my clients, which is, take responsibility for knowing your shit and get organised. We've just listened to Steve stand up here and reel off such intricate detail about his site, to the point where all the abbreviations he was using was like right over my head. But he knows exactly what he's talking about. He's taken the time to really learn his trade. And this is such a key point. Now, when you first start out, you're not going to know everything, okay? But it's understanding that you are going to need to know a lot. Taking the time to actually read up about certain things. I think someone mentioned earlier on about, filling out some forms for grants or whatnot. You're probably going to have to, do a lot of research into why these grants work or whatever it might be. Take the time to do those kind of things. The first time you do anything is the hardest time you ever actually do it. And I mean, look, I'll be honest with you, the first time I started becoming a broker, I was probably one of the worst brokers you'll ever come across. The amount of deals that went south because I was the broker was unbelievable. In fact, I actually remember one time I was trying to do a mortgage for my gym manager at the time, and I fucked it up so badly that I had to change gyms. So that is a genuine story. I had his crying wife on the phone, so maybe not that funny. But I did learn from that experience, and I got better. But that's the case in point. That's me. That, I actually did that. So every single one of you in the room, at some point, whether you've been doing this for 15 years, 20 years, or you've been doing it for 15 minutes, there is going to come a time when you really need to knuckle down and actually learn the trade of being a property investor. It's really, really important. And the second part of that, get organised. I had a client at the time unfollow me on social media recently because he was the most unorganised person I'd ever met. And I actually went on my stories and I didn't mention him by name, but he clearly knew that I was talking about him. And I had a little bit of a mini rant about the fact that basically we were trying to do a bridging loan and it was going through really nicely. And then we hit a snag that the lender couldn't actually locate where he'd been living for the last 3 years. And when I got down to the nitty gritty with him, he had effectively been couch surfing, that's terminology, staying with parents, staying with friends. He rented for 3 or 4 months here and there, but that was basically him for the last 3 years. And he had absolutely nothing that could prove that he was at any of these locations. I don't work with this guy anymore, but it really infuriated me because it's simple stuff. Just being able to be that organised that you can just tell somebody and prove where you've lived for the last 3 years. The fact that we're talking, it put us back months. It put us back months on this deal because we were tracking back, we were contacting councils, we were doing all of this kind of stuff. And the client got very irate, and I can understand why. But ultimately, it was because the guy just wasn't very organised. On the flip side, one of our best clients, when I first spoke to her, and I sort of, I send out the normal email after we've had a conversation. Thanks for the call. If you could send me a little bit of information on this, that, and the other, that'd be great. What followed was effectively an autobiography. The amount of intricate detail that this woman had about her portfolio, all of her businesses, all of the income that they generate, every single rent, every single tenant, every single lender, every single interest rate that she had on every single one of these properties was absolutely out of this world. But that's the level that everyone should be at. That's the level of organisation. And she actually employs a virtual assistant to help her with that. Everyone has access to those kind of people. So even if you are not inherently organised, and I am one of those people, you can bring people into your sphere that can help you with that, Ruby. So that's that, and this is why she's here today, just to probably remind me that I even needed to be here. So having people around you to help you get organised is incredible. And that client is obviously there. You don't necessarily need to be there, but be there. There's no excuse to not be organised, and it's actually incredible. That is actually one of the first things. When I get on a call with a client, I can tell whether they're organised or not, just because of the way that they kind of talk and sort of, you know, their thought processes. And I can tell pretty much by the end of the call whether I think that they're going to be a successful investor or not. I reckon probably 9 times out of 10, I'll probably get it right. And the ones that I think are going to be good investors, I tell them. I actually say, I think you're going to be great and I really want to work with you. The ones that I don't think are going to be successful, I just don't say anything to. So, yeah. Yeah. Well, you know, on that Zoom call, you were just, you know, popping off every 5 minutes, get a cup of tea or whatever. I was talking to Shane for most of it. So, yeah, understanding your trade, knowing your trade inside out, back to front, and being organised, 2 incredible traits that really kind of string together all of my really good quality investors. So all debt is bad debt. I've heard this a lot from quite a number of people over the years. It's not. Anyone that's again, you'll start to know I'm quite well read in terms of I love all these cheesy. Well, my wife calls them what does she call them? Well, they're self-help books. I can't remember the terminology that she used offhand. But Rich Dad Poor Dad. Anyone read Rich Dad Poor Dad? Robert Kiyosaki, absolutely. That was like my game changer book for me. When I read that, I was just like, okay, so the world, it actually isn't anything like what I thought it was. So there's a really good story in there, and this is a key trait. And actually, it's not actually Robert Kiyosaki himself; it's his wife Kim, who comes up with this. Robert Kiyosaki spies this old Porsche that he wants to buy, this classic Porsche. He's wanted it for years and years and years. Bearing in mind, this guy's a pretty rich fella. He could probably just buy it cash if he wanted to. And so the dealer called him. He knew that he wanted it. He went along, did a test drive. Obviously, absolutely loved the car. Went home. As all good husbands do, asked his wife's permission first. And she said, yeah, have it. And I think he was probably quite taken aback by the fact that she was. It's well, wait for the ending. So she said, yes, you can have a car, as long as you go and basically find an asset that's going to pay for it. So what she meant by that is, chances are a lot of us in this room, if we're going to go and buy a car, very few of us are going to go out and buy it cash. If we buy it and the kind of cars that a lot of us are going to buy, you know, we're probably not, you know, maybe I'm not talking for all of you. I know for me personally, I'm not going for any classic Porsches that are probably going to go up in value over the next few years. But we're probably all going to go out and buy depreciating assets. If you get a loan attached to that, then it's bad debt. You effectively, at some point, the value of that car is probably going to go below what you actually have outstanding on the debt. So this was really clever, and this is getting inside the mind of a really clever investor. What she was saying to her husband there was, go and find an asset. They're in real estate, they're in property. Okay, it's a lot easier to buy a house over in the US. You can actually get 100% funding on pretty much anything. Maybe that's why the whole world went to shit about 10 years ago, but there we go. So he went out, found a property that he could rent out, and the net cash flow was going to be enough to cover the car payments on the car finance for the car. So effectively, the asset was paying for that car. He wasn't paying for that car. And of course, at some point, that car finance is then paid. He's then got an asset that's generating him that cash for the rest of his life, or until he sells it. So not all debt is bad debt, but even sometimes it's understanding different types of debt. And again, this brings me on to talking about some of the other clients that I work with, where I guess this is my job. I have to educate my clients on different types of finance products that are available to them to allow them to get from where they are now to where they want to actually get to. And it's that understanding of all of these different types of products and why debt can be utilised. Now, there might be people in this room that actually say, do you know what, Sam? I don't need you as a broker. I don't need Crowd Property. I don't need other lenders I don't need investors to lend me money. I'm going to actually buy my assets cash. And that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong in buying assets cash. However, using debt in the right way, debt is a facilitator. It's an accelerator. It allows you to get to where you want to be a lot quicker than if you didn't use it. And I've seen this recently. We had a client who was buying basically a house that had been split into 4 flats. Legally, it was still all on one freehold. And I know this guy for a long time. He's got cash reserves. He's got money. He could have bought this cash. However, what he said to me was, Sam, I'm going to split the titles on completion, so that's going to add some value to it, right? I said, yeah, probably going to add some value to it. He said, cool. He said, so can I get a bridging lender to lend me, if I do that on completion, so the value is going to be increased on completion, can I get a bridging lender to lend me on what the value will be on completion? I said, yeah. So what he actually did, bearing in mind he had enough to buy this property cash, he actually ended up borrowing 85% of the value of the property because it was based on a percentage of the open market value on completion, and he had more of his cash reserves waiting, sitting there, and ultimately he then went and bought something else cash about 2 or 3 weeks later, which he didn't tell me about, but he wouldn't have been able to do that. That's opportunity cost. So using debt allows you to use the money that you have in a more creative way. It allows that money to go further. And lots of people, if you go on a lot of these property courses and they talk to you about building portfolios, they'll talk to you about, if you've got 200 grand, that you could actually put down four £50,000 deposits. Almost completely buggered that up, didn't I? And have 4 properties. The culmination of which, the cash flow of those, is probably going to be more than just the one property that you would own cash. And you're spreading your risk a little bit as well. If one of those properties isn't tenanted at any one point, you've still got the other 3 to pull it up. Whereas if you just own the one and that's got a void period, you're done. No one's paying that mortgage other than you. So not all debt is bad debt. Utilising and understanding the intricacies of all the various different financial products that are available is a real key trait of what makes a really, really successful investor. So I'm not here to sell to you. You don't need to use me as your broker, but find somebody who can actually educate you on these types of finance products, because I think it is a massively, massively huge benefit to any of you in the room. Now, this has become a little bit of like a slogan for me. I said it once in a room full of people that I really shouldn't have said it in front of. I do swear every now and again, they just kind of drop in, and I'm sorry. But yeah, this is actually my own quote. And the reason why I say interest rates, and I swear it's going to be the title of my book one day, is because I have seen so many times over the years, and it pains me, it really does, when I see really awesome people that have got amazing, amazing ideas, and they don't go ahead with projects, they don't become successful, they don't build their portfolios, or they don't start developing, because they just cannot get their head around the fact that they can't have a 1.2% residential interest rate on their, commercial to residential conversion. I had a client, when did I stop speaking to him? About 2 years ago, I stopped speaking to him. This is funny. He used to send me emails, and the title of the email thread in capitals was "Make me the UK's biggest landlord." Okay, so that was my task. So, pretty easy. He had 10 properties in his portfolio, all personally owned. Some had been inherited, some he just sort of come by over the years. Some he used to live in, and then he's moved out and bought somewhere else and rented that out. So it was kind of like a bit of a higgledy-piggledy type portfolio. Now, he'd become quite a good property sourcer up in Manchester. He was sourcing some really, really good deals, and he was passing them on to other people for a fee. And I remember sitting in his office in North London. He also had a couple of e-commerce businesses. Have you ever seen those Cristiano Ronaldo muscle pad things? Yeah, that's him. Not Cristiano Ronaldo. He just sold the muscle things. I don't even know what they're called. And so he was a good businessman. He knew what he was doing. But when we sort of got to the point where we started to look into sort of restructuring the finance within his portfolio to release him a certain amount of money, and bearing in mind, he had a particular amount in mind, and he was telling me, I'm going to buy this property, this property, this property, and it's going to make this net cash flow. He's really great with the figures. He knew how much the additional cash that he was going to generate from his portfolio was actually going to make him. He knew how much this was going to increase his net cash flow. I went back to him, and bearing in mind, these properties are in London. For those not in the know, yields in London are pretty piss poor. And so how much you can borrow on a buy-to-let mortgage is very much it's all about the rental income that it generates rather than your own income. And so the lower the rental income, the less likely we are to be able to get to the kind of sort of 75% loan to value maximums that we're looking at. So some lenders can be a little bit more flexible, but in general, if a lender's flexible, they're probably going to charge you a little bit more for the privilege of being more flexible. So I've gone back to this guy. I've shown him that we can get the entire portfolio up to 75% loan to value. We can get all the money out that he needs. That's going to enable him to, increase his cash flow by like 3, 4, 5 times. But the interest rate was not his 1.25%, Danny down the road on his residential mortgage. And he just could not get over it. We went back and forth, eventually to the point where he's like, well, maybe I'll just borrow 60% instead. But I'm like, yeah, but then, Mr. Client, you're not pulling out all the money. You can't make the kind of returns that you said you were going to make. You can't do this, you can't do that. And then he would get frustrated about that, and then we'd go back to the 75%, and then he'd tell me, but surely there must be another lender out there that can do it cheaper. And we literally went back and forth. And eventually it just got to the point where we just kind of stopped talking. And it's kind of one of my biggest regrets, that guy, because he had so many of the other traits that I've kind of mentioned on this presentation so far. So he could well have become like, the UK's biggest landlord if he really wanted to. But basically the thing that stopped him was the fact that he was not happy to pay. And bearing in mind, the interest rate I think I suggested to him was like 2.7%. Like, we're not talking about big interest rates here, but he just couldn't get his head round it. And I don't know what he's doing right now. I'm pretty certain it isn't buying up, half of Manchester. He's probably, having drinks with Cristiano Ronaldo or something like that. I don't know. But as I said, it's a really, really frustrating thing for me. Talking a little bit about development, because obviously that's what we're here to talk about as well. A lot of my clients as well, especially when they're early on in their development careers, they get quite taken aback by the cost of development finance when they first start. Because invariably, when you are starting out, you don't have the experience, you don't have the asset base, you might have a half decent income. These are the kind of things that development finance lenders are looking at to basically give them comfort that you are the kind of person that they want to do business with. They can lend you the money and they know they're going to get it back. That's ultimately what they care about. They care about getting their money back with their interest. And if you don't have, the kinds of things that they want, they're going to be more reluctant to lend to you. Or if they are going to be happy to lend to you, they're going to make you pay for it. And I was having a conversation with a client literally just the other day, and we went through his whole deal from start to finish. And this was a development project to build a block of 5 flats, ground up. And he had aspirations of where the net cash flow on that, we were going to refinance it at the end as the exit. He had aspirations of what the net cash flow was going to look like, and he had aspirations for what his return on the capital invested, i.e. the capital that was left in that deal. He had a particular figure, particular percentage in mind. Now, we went through, we actually started from the back and worked our way forward on this. And by going through the finance that I put forward to him, and by looking at the refinance based on some of today's figures, we actually beat his net cash flow target, even with a stress-tested interest rate on the back end of 4%. So happy days. We also beat his target return on capital invested by about 3 or 4% as well, based on those figures. So you would have thought he'd be happy. No. First thing he came to me with was interest rates quite high. I'm like, 9%, mate. You literally have absolutely no experience whatsoever. It's a ground-up development in South London. 9% is pretty darn decent. He then wasn't happy with the lender's arrangement fee. Most lender arrangement fees are 1% to 2%. It's pretty standard across the board. He then wasn't happy about the fact there was an exit fee. I said, look, the exit fee is there because it's to mitigate their risk. You know, you're a high risk to them. This is a high risk project. So he wasn't happy with that. And then the last thing was he wasn't happy with the lender's legal fee, which, bearing in mind he wants to borrow over £1 million, was only about £2,500. And I sort of said to him, no, mate. That's decent. That's actually really, really good. Now, I do actually think he's going to go ahead with this deal because I think I convinced him that, you know, he needs to think about the bigger picture. But that's a great example of somebody that they actually, when they set their targets out of what they wanted to achieve from this first deal, they hit those targets. But we spent over an hour and 20 minutes on the phone sort of arguing back and forth about interest rates effectively. And to me, if he had hit those targets and the interest rate was 40%, who really cares? Who actually cares? It's all about the back end. It's all about what you want to try and get to. And then it's about focusing on those. And that is one of the biggest key traits that I see in the best developers that I work with. They actually don't give two hoots about the interest rate at all. As long as the entire deal stacks up. Look, it's my job to get my clients the cheapest lending that I possibly can within reason. But there are other things to take into account, like their circumstances, like the service that they're going to be able to provide, like the speed that sometimes they're going to be able to actually transact at, because some of these cheap development finance lenders can take 3 or 4 months to get these things across the line. Often, your vendors are not going to stick around for that kind of time frame. They're going to, you know, they're going to want to move on by then. So there are other things to take into account, but ultimately, you know, the cost of the funds is irrelevant if the deal stacks up. And as I said, that for me is the winner. If you can get your head around that and you can stop focusing on the small stuff and look at the bigger picture, you're definitely going to be much more successful. So as I said, look, oh God, there I am again. I didn't want to bore you guys. Well, I might have bored you guys. I don't know. I didn't want to bore you guys with interest rates and stuff like that. When I first started coming and doing these kind of presentations, I basically subbed in for someone at one of my old companies, and I had to use his presentation. And his presentation was basically a list of all of Shawbrook's latest rates, which was boring as hell. And you know, I've never seen more people just start looking down at their phones as soon as I started talking in my life. So thank you all for not just staring at your phones the entire time I was up here. But if you do really want to learn any more about what I do or hear more about kind of what I talk about, I make it nice and easy for you. I am the Sam Norris, not any other Sam Norris. No relation to Lando or Chuck or Steve, if you can go that far back. I call Lando Norris my cousin. He doesn't know that yet, but we are cousins. So yeah, go ahead, follow me. If you've taken any pictures, tag me. And yeah, look, I hope this has been helpful for you all. If any of you want to chat about anything after this, I'm going to hang around for a little bit. But obviously, if you've got to shoot off, best thing to do is catch me on the socials, send me a direct message, and I'll be here to answer any kind of questions that you guys have got. So thanks ever so much for listening to me, and see you soon.